Look, I filmed a video on an Nfs Unbound with the RTX 2070 this time. But I'm playing the game at 1080p at the ultra settings. These are the settings we're playing with. Everything is set to its max value. And yeah, this GPU is in the recommended specs, but in RTX 2070, and for the CPU it's a Ryzen 3600, I believe. I'm using a Ryzen 3700X, which is slightly more powerful. Should be close enough that it shouldn't really matter too much. Alright, driving through the city. This area is very CPU intensive, and we're getting CPU bottlenecked already. GPU is sitting at 80% usage, so we can get what, another like 10 to 20 FPS on top of this. Quite good, surprisingly. But once we leave the cities, we should see a pretty decent FPS bump. Hopefully up to the 90s and the 100s. There we go, 90 FPS. So this is running quite well so far. I'm guessing at 1440p we get 60 FPS, and at 4K probably 30 to 40 FPS. Oh, this card is a grip build and it's just sliding in the rain. But yeah, I think 1440p will get 60 FPS on average, and 4K 30 to 40. Can use Dlss for both of them as well. This is an RTX card, and at 1440p Dlss does look quite good. Maybe a bit softer than native 1440p, but honestly it's close enough that it doesn't really matter too much. And at 4K looks perfect, pretty much just as good as native, and should be able to get 60 FPS with Dlss. Or if you want to go the native route, I guess you could just play the game at 30 FPS, but you're losing a bit of car responsiveness and it's not really worth the trade-off, to be honest. Alright, so far the game's running really well, no stuttering, no lagging at all. We're using up 6.7 gigs of VRAM, which is slightly lower than the RTX 3060 Ti. I think for that card we're sitting at 7.7 gigs or 7.6 gigs at 1080p Epic, or 1080p Ultra I should say. So it's a bit weird how each card works, but yeah, it's close enough I guess. Even outside the cities we're still dropping down into the 70s, so average FPS for this card is around 70 to 90 FPS, with occasional dips into the high 60s as well. If you're playing at 1080p, should have no issues at all running this game. Just make sure you got a powerful enough CPU so you don't bottleneck yourself in those heavier scenes. Back to the settings, there we are. Still at the ultra settings, and no DLSS. Look at that, just above 60 FPS. Very close to 70. Oh, dropping down into the mid 60s. Around what I thought it would run it at, to be honest. I think 1440p 60 FPS is where we're going to be sitting with this card. Obviously shouldn't be running into a CPU bottleneck at this point. The CPU can handle around 60 to 80 FPS, so yeah, no surprises there. VRAM is sitting at 7.2 gigs, so it's slightly climbed up from 1080p. And 2070 is about the same performance as an RTX 3060, I believe. So if you got a 3060, you should be getting around the same performance as what you're seeing here. Now, leaving the city, what are we going to be getting? Probably maybe 70 FPS. Yeah, there you go. Very close to 70 FPS. It's kind of inconsistent, going from the low 60s up to the low 70s, but as long as we don't fall into the 50s, should be good there. And we're getting kind of close to it, to be honest, but haven't actually seen 50 FPS yet. And even if it does drop to 50 FPS, like the mid 50s or the high 50s, it's still very much playable. Very hard for you to tell the difference between 55 FPS to 65 FPS anyway, so you can enjoy this game at native 1440p without too much issues. But if you want to get a bit more FPS out of your card, you can use DLSS as well. Wouldn't go past balance mode, to be honest. Oh, we're just sitting in the low high 50s now, very close to it. But yeah, if you want to get more FPS out of your card, you can use DLSS. Wouldn't go past the balance preset, to be honest. Ideally I would use the quality mode, but you can use balance as well. It does look very similar to the quality preset, but once you go past that 1440p, start losing a bunch of quality and it's not really worth it, to be honest. 54 FPS there for a second, that was super intensive. Drive to the trees, it's probably gonna, there you go, 50 FPS again. Feels fine, to be honest. Even at 52 FPS, it does feel quite decent still. Yeah, not too bad. You definitely do feel this sudden FPS drop from the mid 60s up to the low 50s, but that's for a split second and it goes away, so I don't know. It's up to the person, to be honest. It's all personal preference. If you don't like that feeling, then go ahead and use DLSS, which is what I'm going to be doing right now. Alright, and here we are with quality DLSS. Let's drive around. Feeling a couple of micro stutters right now though. The game is stuttering a little bit at the start. This wasn't the case before. but FPS is sitting in the 80s now. Really comfortably above 60. Shouldn't fall into the 50s anymore. But I guess we'll see in a second. Let's keep going. Full boost. Let's grow some wings. Let's go. Oh, okay, I just ate it. That guy just ate it. I'm gonna leave the city real quick and hopefully drive back to where we were before. And this game does look quite good. Even at 440p with DLSS, it looks so nice in the rain. They've done a good job, to be honest, with the graphics in this game. This is a really good game overall. I'm having a really good time playing it. It's definitely an upgrade over Heat. I know some people don't really like the effects that are happening. I don't like the wings, to be honest, more than anything. But other than that, I think the game overall is really nice. Whoa, watch it. Oof. Alright, 80 FPS outside of the city. Quite nice. I think at this point you're going to be sitting at 65 FPS up to 85 FPS. It's a wide range, but I want to be safe in case of those heavier scenes. But I think ideally, or on your average basis, you want to be sitting in the low 70s up to the low 80s. Alright, and finally playing the game at 4K. These are our settings. Same as before, no DLSS obviously. And here we go. Getting 35 FPS. So at the start of the video I did say that 4K will be around the 30-ish FPS mark. And we'll just look at that. Getting 32 FPS. Quite playable honestly still. Not stuttering or lagging at all. I'm using a keyboard and mouse here and the handling of the car is quite good still. Not really struggling with turning the car around or playing the game in general. It's feeling quite good. Let's fly up here real quick. Now even though the keyboard and mouse feel is still quite good, ideally I would use a controller. If you want to play the game at native 4K at 30 FPS, just use a controller. Definitely have a way better feeling game I would imagine. Keyboard and mouse isn't going to be as ideal at those low frame rates than a controller would. But the smart thing to do is to use DLSS and hopefully get 60 FPS. I think we might have to use the performance mode to get a consistent 60. But maybe balance will be just good enough. Okay, so the lowest FPS that I've seen it so far is around 27 FPS. Ooh, 26 FPS just then. Wow, that felt kind of laggy. I'm gonna crash. Yep. Or 23 FPS. That is not good at all. For the most part, it does run pretty well. It is definitely playable, but in those heavier scenes, we are dropping down into the mid-20s. So I think for most people, DLSS is the way to go. Alright, and here we are with DLSS at the quality. FPS is sitting in the mid-40s up to the low 50s. So if you call my last video, which was this game with the RTX 3060 Ti, at 4K native, we're getting 45 to 55 FPS. So this is very similar to that card, but with DLSS instead of running the game at native 4K. But at 4K, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. The quality will look the same with DLSS or without it. It looks so close that for the average person, can't really tell the difference anyway. And all that matters is the FPS and the consistency. The game's not stuttering. We're running beautifully so far. No crashes either. It's getting better every day.
Got ourselves a racer out here.
But FPS is sitting in the low to mid 40s in the cities, and once we leave the city, we're sitting in the mid to high 40s consistently. We do get some dips into the low 40s unfortunately, but this for the most part is way more responsive than what we had before at 4K native. It's a good start for sure, but we can do better. Okay, and with balanced DLSS, what are we getting? Sitting probably the low 50s? Yeah, look at that. Honestly close enough to 60 FPS anyway that at this point I don't really mind playing at 50 FPS. The game does look quite good still. Pretty much the same as the quality preset or native 4K. Oh, jumping down into the 40s occasionally even. Yeah, I don't know. Not much of an FPS boost to be honest. It is occasionally, but you still drop down into the 40s regardless, so I don't know. Kind of torn about this one. I think for this card, might have to use performance mode to get maybe close to 60 FPS. It might not even happen still, who knows. Wow, the low 40s even. Oh, this is tough, this is tough. I think regardless, I would go with balanced anyway because the quality is just as good as native 4K or the quality mode. They all look the same to me and look very good regardless. Might as well take the extra FPS where you can get it. Finally, with the performance DLSS, oh, this guy is bugging out. As you can see, the game is looking quite nice still. Unfortunately, I don't think we can hold the consistent 60 with this. We're very close to it, sitting in the mid 50s up to the low 60s, but in those heavier scenes, dropping down into the 50s. Look at that, 51 FPS already, man. Wow. That is not good. The game feels fine, honestly. Doesn't feel laggy or anything like that. Not ideal that we're not getting 60 FPS, but the responsiveness of the car isn't really being affected at 50 FPS versus 60 FPS, so I don't think the average person would really care that much. You can play the game at medium settings or high settings and try to get 60 FPS perfectly, but the quality loss might not be worth it, to be honest, at that point. Man, here we're still falling down to the 40s even. That's just atrocious. Not even close to getting 60 FPS out here. It's a bit rough. It's kind of inconsistent, but FPS is ranging between the mid 40s up to the low 60s at this point. I think turning down the vegetation quality might help us out here, trying to get 60 FPS consistently, but as it is right now, we are struggling a little bit. So we're playing the game at 4K with performance DLSS, and most settings are set to high and ultra, with some set to medium, and yeah. Let's keep going. Should hopefully get 60 FPS comfortably at this point. Looks like we are, sitting in the low 70s and then down into the mid 60s. This is really nice. The quality of the game looks pretty good as well still. Oh, 60 FPS just then. We're getting very close to our limit. Please hold it. Please hold it, game. Come on. Oh, I'm gonna crash here, I think. Okay, that ambulance is not gonna be helping anyone out today. Right here we're sitting at 44 FPS. And right now we're sitting at 70 FPS. So a definite upgrade in terms of FPS. The trees don't look the best, and we're getting some pop-in now. So this is for people who want to get 60 FPS at 4K. This is the way to do it. Alright, so for the video, guys, if you made it this far, appreciate you. As always, if you like what you see, then I like and sub the channel, I appreciate it as well. See you next time.